Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bencavanga, and welcome to another edition of Facts Over Fear. So, what does it take to make people pay attention to immigration enforcement right now in America? In Pennsylvania, the answer is a 100-mile walk to a detention center most people don't even know exists. The destination is Moshannon Valley Processing Center. This is the largest immigration detention facility in the Northeast. At the same time, the data is showing arrests by immigration and customs enforcement are rising, not just around the region, but of course, nationally, part of a broader national crackdown that has been building for months. And now we are seeing the fallout, not just inside detention centers, but across entire communities. Workers are skipping shifts out of fear, families afraid to leave their homes, businesses losing customers, and local economies quietly bleeding out. This is the hidden cost of this so-called enforcement, a slow-moving economic shock that arrives long after the headlines fade. The real question isn't just what's happening yet inside the walls, it's what happens when fear becomes baked into our public policy and reshapes the way in which we and our communities live and work. Joining me now is Jaime Martinez. He is the executive director of the Pittsburgh-based Frontline Dignity, and he is on his way as we speak. Well, he's taking a little break, but he's on his way as we speak to Moshannon. So, Jaime, thank you so much for connecting with us while you're on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
So let's just get right into it, because when this came across my desk late last week, and they said you were going to be doing this and walking the walk 100 miles from Pittsburgh to Moshannon, what inspired this moment?
Yeah, well, something we always talk about with Frontline. Well, first off, before anything else, thank you for having us here. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for the space. Um, Frontline Dignity is called Frontline Dignity because we recognize that the key root cause of so many of these crises, especially the immigration crisis, is apathy to dignity. It's us being okay with the constant dehumanization of our neighbors. And so, if we can get to that root cause through witness, through legal observation, through documentation, through us transforming the way in which we're relating to one another, that's going to do a lot to transform the outcomes of this crisis. And so, um, I've had the chance over the course of the last few years to walk on the Camino de Santiago. It's a pilgrimage through northern Spain. I once walked 1,000 miles on it, and then again 350 miles with a backpack. The first time I went alone, yet I met people from 6 continents. And when you block out the noise of everything that's going on in the world, all of the news and the things that we have to do, and you just focus on human connection and relationship authentically, so much comes out of that vulnerability, relationship, friendships that really last and that are meaningful, where even if you may disagree on some really important things, you can still get through to people. And we're not getting through to each other right now. So this is an attempt to, it's also inspired by the civil rights marches of the South, but overall it's an attempt to go into places that no one is going into and having these conversations, and meeting neighbors where they're at, literally walking with them, and bringing attention to Moshannon Valley Processing Center and the detention conditions there, as well as calling for it to be shut down because our values need to align with the environment that we pay into and that we work and thrive in.
So let's break that down a little bit, because I don't think people are aware, a lot of people are aware of Moshannon. Can you explain exactly what this place is and how it got to be the biggest, the largest detention center for ICE in the Northeast?
Yeah, so Moshannon Valley Processing Center is in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. That's in Clearfield County. So it's about a 3 hour drive from Pittsburgh, and it holds 1,876 beds. It's a large compound, so to speak, surrounded by woods. And it's, it holds about 1,500 people every day. 73.6% of people held in immigration detention have no criminal convictions. And so when we apply that statistic to Moshannon, we realize that it's a lot of abuelas and abuelos and aunties and uncles and spouses that are detained without due process, that are held without access to legal counsel for many times, months at a time, and that have subpar living conditions.
Yeah.
Spaces where solitary confinement is disproportionately used as compared to other immigration detention facilities in the country. Spaces where it is too cold where they live and the shower water is too hot.
Mm.
Where they are not given a pillow, where I have gone to meet people in solitary confinement and they have shown me their sweat stains because they've only gotten one change of clothes. We have stories about people being fed a starvation diet after getting sick and losing 30 pounds in 2 weeks. This cannot stand. People are dying in this facility. The chaplain was recently accused of sexual assault in the last few months. There's a system that is unaccountable to the people that pay into it. And ultimately, it's making rich people richer. It's funded, or it all goes, the money goes to the Geo Group, which is a private
Mhm.
for profit prison company. And they make $2 million plus a month on top of a per head daily rate. And so they are literally kidnapping our neighbors,
Mhm.
warehousing them,
Mhm.
profiting off of that warehousing,
Mhm.
and then keeping them as long as they can, all to make wealthy people more wealthy. That's not something that Pennsylvania should stand with.
I really appreciate you being so frank about what is going on because I think there is this misunderstanding about what is happening in these spaces that are literally in our backyards. I know someone whose partner, and I'm going to be very vague in these details to protect them, was kidnapped by ICE and is currently in Moshannon as well. And the conditions that they shared with me completely mirror what you said, and also the cost of things, $12 for a bar of soap, $15 for a can of sardines, things like that, that make already these unattainable goals of basic necessities even more unattainable. So to your point, to me, this just reeks of greed, of profiting off of people's suffering in their most vulnerable moments. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the reality of the fact that we are seeing an increase in arrests across Western Pennsylvania. That's of course tied to ICE. When you're looking at this surge, Jaime, how significant has it been since the Trump administration came back into power? How does it compare with what you've seen historically?
Yeah, well, we've seen an increase in activity since the start of the administration for sure. And it's becoming more and more brutal in their tactics, right? We're seeing a change in the way in which they operate. Immigration enforcement in Pittsburgh is mirroring what we're seeing across the country in places like Minneapolis and Chicago, where they're engaging in what are called snatch and grab operations. There's at least what organizers and advocates are calling snatch and grabs, where within the span of 7 minutes, they pull a car over or they find somebody on the street, they take them into custody immediately, and they're out, all very, very quickly, which is making it
Mhm.
hard for neighbors to witness and for neighbors to ask what's going on and ask for information. And so people are quite literally being abducted in the span of 7 minutes. Frontline Dignity is responding to about 65 incidents per month as of now,
Mm.
65 to 70, and we've seen a slight increase in the last few months. Um, so we're gauging what it is that exactly means, but it mirrors recent news coverage of an increase in arrests and ICE activity.
I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't want you to think I wasn't listening. I was listening, but you were jogging my memory about something. So if you see me looking down, I'm just taking notes
Oh,
off
you're
of the
good.
important work that you're saying. I wanted to touch a little bit on what we're seeing based off of that snatch and grab, because the words due process used to mean something here in the United States, right? And I hear a lot of people whenever I post about ICE, the thing I always get in return is, well, these are criminals. These are bad people. They're illegals. They shouldn't be here. But the reality, Jaime, it's twofold, and I welcome your comments on both of them. One, we know that American citizens and people who are legally here, quote unquote, are also being held in these facilities. Can you talk a little bit about why due process is so important in this moment and why people who are here legally as well are afraid to go to work, to go to school, to participate in daily life because of what we're witnessing?
Yeah, well, everyone who lives in American territory, who stands on American territory, has access to constitutional rights.
That's
That
right.
includes the right to due process. That's
Mhm.
not something that is defended by a piece of paper or not. The Constitution merits that for everybody. And unfortunately, what we're seeing way too often is number one, the systemic uh, de-documenting people. People are
Mhm.
systemically being de-documented. So they came in legally, they are here legally, and then from one day to the next, out of a sense of retribution or retaliation or anger, the
Mhm.
federal administration decides to roll back their legal status, now making them undocumented, needing to find a different kind of status. That is inherently super destabilizing to any family.
Yeah.
To one day feel like everything is okay and that you live in this country and you have all the documentation you need, and the next be in complete limbo. And ICE is taking advantage of that. People are afraid to go to places like Walmart and Target and bookstores and to grocery stores at large, to restaurants where they can eat because ICE is quite literally hanging out in these areas waiting for people. But we're seeing community fight back. We have seen patrols at courts. Just today, actually, at city court, we saw a community of neighbors watch ICE agents come in through the door, and then just there was a staring contest, and they left empty-handed. They didn't take anybody into custody that day because people were watching, right? Um, Unfortunately, ICE is taking people because of racial profiling,
Mhm.
and they're taking folks that are, for example, going into court to resolve a case to figure out whether they are innocent or guilty, taking them before that's able to be resolved, and then moving them far, far away from the place where they can actually have a trial or finish their court proceeding, thereby bypassing due process. Then, because of the fact that they have a charge, without any sort of resolution, regardless of whether they're innocent or guilty, it complicates their way of re-entering the country or anything else. And what we're seeing is police officers are unfortunately finding any reason to take somebody into custody, slapping any charge, knowing that as soon as ICE is called in, they can whisk them off and they'll never have the opportunity to fight back. That is un-American.
It's beyond un-American. I appreciate that breakdown. Um, there's a visibility gap here. And I know this is why you are partly why you are on this pilgrimage to bring attention to Moshannon. Can you talk a little bit more about what Americans aren't seeing inside these detention centers from what you've been tracking? Because you alluded to these horrific conditions. What are you hearing from the people who are residing inside this space and also from the people left behind, family members, friends, community members?
Yeah, so we had the family member of somebody detained at our press conference on Easter Sunday in front of the ICE office in Pittsburgh, and she
Mm.
described how she can only see her brother through plexiglass now.
Ugh.
Can see him but cannot touch him, cannot give him a hug. How he, through tears, said, "Take care of my kids."
Mm.
There is real heartbreak to what's happening. These are very real consequences, and there's a mountain of expenses, right? I think they said that they've spent more than $25,000 in legal fees, and they still need to pay more. This is a system that is not built for the people that it's affecting, and unlike the normal like criminal justice system, you don't have access to a public defender, an attorney free
Mm.
of charge, should you not be able to afford one when it comes to immigration court. So lots of people don't have access to due process. Um,
Ugh.
like you said, in these facilities, people are working for $1 a day, and bar of soap, a cup of ramen is outrageously expensive. Unfortunately, as well, guards, right, and
Mm.
guards in detention facilities across the country. There's oftentimes a bit of like tension, right, and
Mhm.
us versus them mentality which leads to mistreatment and which leads to oversight and a lack of wanting to investigate things. There have been alleged suicides at this facility. Um, so there's a lack of access to care. There's a lack of access to compassion. Um, and families are affected by it every day. We have seen like little kids and their moms being turned around because the guard at the front desk decided that the mom was wearing something that was too risque when she was wearing a normal t-shirt. Like finding every little reason. I'm seeing some comments on here and it says they want
Oh
to
yeah,
traumatize.
I'm going to get to those in a minute. And I just didn't
Yeah.
want to interrupt you.
No, that's perfect, but it encapsulates the point perfectly. Like, it is intentional trauma, and every single day, more and more and more families are being inflicted a huge amount of trauma, all to the tune of millions of dollars being funneled into shareholders and stocks, making rich people richer. And that's not something that benefits the residents of Clearfield County or anybody that resides in one of these areas that has a detention facility, quite frankly.
Absolutely. If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bencavanga. I'm chatting with Jaime Martinez. He is the executive director of the Pittsburgh-based Frontline Dignity, and he is on a pilgrimage right now from Pittsburgh to Moshannon Valley Processing Center, which is the largest immigrant detention facility in the Northeast. It's about 100 miles from Pittsburgh. Lydia Page has had some comments here. So, Lydia, to Jaime's point, you had said, yes, they want to traumatize people. They know what trauma does. She also said that they want to bankrupt everyone and that this is slavery by America. I really think it's an important point that she brought up the slavery by America because, I mean, this is what concerns me. And this is why I am consistently saying abolish ICE. And I stand very firmly in that statement. Because if we look at the for-profit prison system and we look at what's happening at these detention centers, we already know in our for-profit prison system here in the United States, first of all, that incarcerates more people in our country than really anywhere in the world. People are working inside these centers, these jails, at either, like you said, $1 a day or for nothing, and that is slavery. And that is what we're seeing now in these ICE facilities. And I don't think people are understanding this or making this connection that there is a lot of private oversight over these buildings. There is not a lot of ability for our Congress people to have access to these spaces when they are supposed to be able to have access to these spaces. Let's talk a little bit about that and this larger context of a systemic problem that we are fueling this fire with by creating these massive warehouses into detention centers. And there's more that are in the works as we speak.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's this administration's agenda to warehouse people.
Yeah.
Warehouse people and put them to work for subpar wages, all to the tune, once again, of making rich people a hell of a lot richer. And we oftentimes hear the argument that to the county, it brings jobs and it brings high paying jobs. And what do you mean we're going to take away this contract and then people are going to lose their jobs? And to that, I would just say, it seems like we're lacking political imagination,
Yeah.
right? It's the responsibility of our leaders, of our policymakers to engineer the environment around us so that our values are aligned with our material needs and our mental and emotional and spiritual needs, right? And how can we live with ourselves knowing that each and every day a main income source for our county dehumanizes the people that America is made up of?
Yeah.
And we've been having a lot of great conversations with neighbors. They are literally walking outside of their barns, outside of their doors. They peek their head out of their cars and they say, "What are you guys doing? Why are you walking? What's going on?" And we have these really constructive conversations where they may not always agree. Like you said, a lot of the times it's, well, they're criminals and they're bad people, like they should be locked up. And where we can start to explain, well, that's not been the experience we've had.
Yeah.
And we've started to build those bridges of understanding. So, you know, it's a system that is fueled by propaganda, that is fueled by media that has distorted incentives, and
That's
that's
right.
super unfortunate. But the only thing that's going to get us out of here is, again, authentic human relationship and connection and speaking truth to power and finding common ground in order to build trust.
Amen. Jaime, this is why I always enjoy our conversations. I really appreciate your framing of how we are all in this together. And even though things look very dire, people have always been able to overcome oppression, and we can continue to do that when we work together. I've had the privilege of hearing you speak at different events, and I had clocked you a while ago. I was like, that person is very interesting in how they're approaching this. And I really like them and respect them. And I'm really glad that I've gotten to know you and been able to share space with you right now. As we wrap this up, um, I want to expand upon that because, like I said, you are always, at least when I've heard you speak, hopeful. And I really respect that and I appreciate that. When we're looking at this, how do you remain in that framework? Because I think in your position, you are bombarded with some of the most horrific stories. And I'm sure it's hard to not internalize all of that. How do you remain hopeful and committed to this idea of collective humanity is the way forward and seeing each other is the way forward?
It's the small interactions, it's the moments in the mundane that make all of this an extremely hopeful endeavor.
Yeah.
And I think this pilgrimage to Moshannon, this walk has been every day a parable of what humanity looks like at its best.
Mm.
Just today, we had two folks join us, and they came in the same car. And I'm talking to them, and it turned out that they hadn't met each other before Sunday at our press conference. But I'd encourage people to exchange phone numbers to get to know somebody they hadn't talked to. And they followed through on that. And they said, "Do you want to walk together?" And then they did. And it was wonderful to get to see them and get to know one another and to see them connect and to walk through the beautiful pastures of rural Pennsylvania. I've been able to witness some of our logistics people who arrive at a restaurant way before we do and start setting things up for us. And, the cooks come out of the kitchen and they say, "Aren't you those protest people? We heard there's some anti-ICE protests walking through here." And they say, "Well, you know what? Protest is a strong word. This is a walk. These are not scary people that we're talking about," and start showing them pictures and videos. And by the time we walk in, weary and sweaty and a little sunburnt and dirty, like you see me right now, they're laughing and they're jovial with us, and we're able to make real connections. They said, "Aren't
Mhm.
you the guy that was dancing at 5 a.m.?" There's a video of me dancing, and waking everybody up, who's been walking. And we have good conversations. We're able to dispel myths. People that are complaining, those same cooks complain that illegals are getting access to federal public benefits like SNAP. At which point, our logistics person said, "Well, no, they're not actually. I don't know if
Yeah.
you knew that, but that's not the truth. And here's what is the truth. And here's what we're doing. And this is what dignity means to us." That's the bridge of understanding. And this was in the middle of nowhere coming out of Apollo.
Mhm.
The only business out of like 10 miles, a 10-mile stretch. Um, when we go into the communities that we think are lost to partisanship, that are
Mhm.
lost to polarization, that we don't think we can ever talk to or ever reach, and we come in with the humility of a neighbor, with the curiosity to know their story and know why they think the way that they do, and with the grace to construct bridges of understanding, we can be surprised at how much we have in common. And this entire trip so far has been a case in point of that. It's been a complete encapsulation of that. So we also, as well as calling attention to what's going on in Moshannon, want to show people that there is a better way. There's a way in which we don't antagonize an us versus them, and we start to set our sights on what we have in common and who is really at the center of all of this.
Mhm.
Who is really moving the pieces to turn us against each other. And when we can finally work together to create a country that we can all live and thrive in, regardless of who we are, what it is that we believe. So, it's called Frontline Dignity for a reason, right? And we're so excited to model that and have fun stories to take back to our trainings and to our people. Um, we're also doing a frontline on foot campaign. We're doing a fundraising campaign, and we have a very ambitious goal, and people have been very generous in donating. And I think the results speak for themselves. In 3 months, we've recruited 1,000 volunteers for rapid response. We're responding to things very frequently. We've done trainings in 6 different regions or cities of the country. We've gone as far as Oregon. We've went to Minneapolis. We've been to Alligator Alcatraz in New York and Baltimore. So we're pioneering, I think, a new kind of community mobilization, like you said, and it's working. It's
Yeah.
working. People are responding to it. And so every day I wake up, I bring my authentic self to work. I'm relentless in how we bring people into the fold, and
Mhm.
I'm energized by the response that that's getting.
Well, we appreciate that. Michael Buzelli says, "Love you both." We love you too, Michael.
We love you,
Um,
Mike.
as we wrap up, everything you said totally resonates with me because that's why I started this show, Facts Over Fear. It's once again that bridge of understanding that there is so much fear mongering, there is so much misinformation. But when we sit and reflect on the facts, we realize most of us want the same things and that we have more in common than we realize, and that our differences can be celebrated. To your point, we don't have to be in opposition to one another in order to exist and have a place in the world. Everyone can be seen in their full humanity if we all form a circle together. And I'm so honored to stand in that circle with you today, Jaime. I appreciate all that you're doing. Please keep me in the loop of how this journey goes. I definitely want to have you back. I always enjoy our conversations. And if people want to learn more or support Frontline, where can they go?
They can go to frontlinedignity.org. And on our homepage, you can find our Frontline on Foot campaign. And we'd love to have your support, even if you can't walk. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Frontline Dignity. And stay tuned because we are keeping everybody hyper aware of what it is that we're doing.
Well, I appreciate you. Thanks so much to everybody who tuned in, especially all of the incredible comments. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but you are valued, you are seen, and you are appreciated. And until next time, everyone, as always, please take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks so much.